How has no asked op about the sheets? Greater than in housekeeping, we do not change out the big comforter on top. Is this like a standard thing or just where you work? Can I ask why you don't? I'm in communications. People think having a job which does social media is so fun. If anything, working on it behind the scenes sucks the fun out of being social media. Emo.
Fellow ex-housekeeper. Not changing the top comforter is *standard*. Do not sit on it. Do not lay on it. It's gross.
The level of care your disabled loved one gets in a residential facility varies from shift to shift. Med errors are common due to staff shortages and unfamiliar staff being floated in. Your loved one is then at risk of being harassed or injured by another resident when their meds are screwed up. Additionally, your loved one gets little physical affection due to valid fears of accusations of inappropriate behavior. The only human touch they get is from gloved workers providing personal care, the occasional high five, or being put in a restraint hold when they are in immediate danger to themselves or others. Lastly, if you work in this field, you will be touched inappropriately by residents, and there is really no recourse for staff when this occurs.
In-home caregiver here. I have yet to be physically harassed, but I've caught nearly every older man noticing that I'm in good shape. More than once. Often, while I'm speaking to them. They haven't been awful about it, fortunately. Just my experience.
Pharmacist, hospital-based UK. I never tell people how I catch several potentially fatal prescribing mistakes every single day at work. I don't want people to stop trusting their doctors, and they would if they saw how bad it is. Not all doctors are bad prescribers, but most are overworked and tired. Mistakes are easily made in a busy hospital. My friend is a pharmacist in a hospital and said a nurse asked for a certain amount of some liquid thing for a patient. Clearly I know medical jargon well, but had added an extra zero to how much she needed. My friend noticed that would be a lethal amount and double-checked to confirm it should be without the extra zero. The nurse had an "oh shit" moment and got the correct amount. That story terrifies me to this day, to think what would have happened if no one caught it.
I work for a medical insurance company. We get complaints that the hold time is too long. The problem is that everyone calls in the morning. The department I'm in has 40 reps that have 600 calls coming in the first 4 hours. Then the rest of the day we are sitting around waiting for a few calls. The reps get off work each hour and the last hour has only 10 reps. But we just sit there and talk to each other.
Yes, my boomer mom was dreading calling in customer service for something, and she says, I've got to do this first thing in the morning before everyone else. Ma, everyone calls in the morning. She couldn't believe it. But since I've worked customer service, I told her all old people with no jobs, sorry ma, but not sorry, have all the time in the world to complain. Don't be a statistic lol.
Psychologist here. When you're reading profiles of a potential new therapist in an online directory, be wary of people who say they treat everything. There's no way in hell I can be good at working with people with bipolar disorder and chronic pain and a history of complex trauma. Each is a specialty that requires a lot of time to be good at. The profiles aren't verified except for the person being licensed, so I can literally say anything about my background and abilities. Also, the vast majority of people not in academia don't read the research that's published once they graduate. In their defense, it's often inaccessible due to scientific journal paywalls. So all the new research doesn't reach most therapists unless it's presented in a continuing education course. We do have favorite patients.
This is definitely true. I went to a therapist who put eating disorders on her list, then told me I should use MyFitnessPal because it's like a fun game. Like WTF? To be fair, she was very good at helping me with other things. She probably should have just left eating disorders off her bio since she definitely was not trained in treating them lol.
Your parents and grandparents are miserable. The nursing home is so dystopian that it would break your suspension of disbelief if you read about it in a science fiction novel. Meeting the basic daily needs of our elders requires a combination of Herculean effort, obscene luck, and really tragic compromises. Sometimes there's only 4 people in the entire building taking care of over 100 residents for over an 8-hour period. The shareholders love it when that happens. In my country, it's a problem as well that the caretakers sometimes don't even speak the language, which means that the few short times over the day that the residents get to interact with someone, It's someone who doesn't understand them and can't listen to their complaints or their small talk.
This is super niche, but I think it belongs here. I used to work for a hyperrealist painter who would sell the paintings for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The secret? He didn't actually know how to paint. He used a giant printer to print out photographs onto canvas and had a team of assistants to cover it with just enough paint to make it look like it was genuine.
I just watched a documentary on Andy Warhol. Some of his work was created that way.
Environmental scientist for the government. We use an absurd amount of plastic waste. I mean absurd. We consider it sterile, so everything is covered, wrapped, bagged in plastic. Ironic.
Not my current job but my old one. Wedding tax is 100% real. I worked at a winery that rented out event space. The regular event and wedding were identical packages, except the wedding package was almost triple the cost. You had the same rules, same amenities, same hash of staff. It was part of my job to set up the event room and I never even knew what I was setting up for. I was just given a short list of how many tables and how many chairs to put at each, and if they chose to use our linens or not.
Did anyone ever get away with booking a generic event package for a wedding? I always hear about the wedding tax and figure you could avoid saying the W word when prepping, but not sure if that's realistic.
I feel like some people in the general population might know about this, but Subway isn't as fresh as it seems, lol, at least when I worked there.
Never seemed that fresh to me, lol.
When you go out to eat, so many people have touched that lemon that you wanted in your water. And terrible things grow in ice machines and soda guns. Lots of places don't clean them often enough.
Yep, I worked in a restaurant 16 to 21 and it was really the most hygienic, soda guns cleaned every night, but you couldn't pay me to use the lemons. Most of us have no idea what the usefulness of our research for the real-world application is. We just enjoy finding new stuff. Particle physics research.
That's great though. Keep finding new stuff and accidentally discover something game-changing. Science continues.
Charity sector. The amount spent on brand and marketing and awareness campaigns. Granted, it is freely available information in our public annual report, and it is arguably justifiable spending, but we don't go around advertising it because most people would be upset because they don't understand why we have to spend millions to make millions.
Yeah, I've found that most people don't really understand how nonprofits work in that regard. They get super upset when funds are spent on anything besides programs, services, but don't consider that in order to provide those services you need to employ, and pay professionals and you need to raise funds, which requires marketing, Devo. Years ago I worked in a sect of collections for a bank. I helped find cars to repossess. Please make everything on your social media accounts private and don't share your every move with the world. They'll find it, call the tow company, and your car will be towed after you told someone you'd be at whatever concert on a Saturday night. Glad I moved away from that job. It felt really gross after a while, but when you are moving up in a company while also trying not to be even more poor than you already are, sometimes you take the job that gives you bad karma. Happy to do boring old QA for the rest of my life.
Can confirm this working in collections. It's horrible job. You wouldn't believe how many people post everything on social media down to new location and contact information. We're even told to call people Facebook friends to find info. It's super scummy.
Librarian. There's a solid chance that we'll recycle your donated materials.
We sell what we can online, and if we can't, we rip them apart to use as packing for stuff that does sell online.
Music industry record label. There's a 50-50 chance that your signed vinyl, CD was forged by a random intern. If the artist did sign it, it's likely a tired cramped hand squiggle because they've signed thousands already that day. Artists hate signing. I'm talking about the pre-signed stuff you buy from their store, not in-person signings.
You can lie and say you didn't click the link or download the attachment and run the malware 16 times, but we know you did. We can see you did it and when. That consent to monitoring banner you click when you log in means we log everything that happens on your work computer. This isn't a secret, but people still act surprised. Museum worker here. In every museum, there will be a number of objects that have been lost, possibly for hundreds of years. We are relying on museum workers from the past recording where something is accurately. When you go to look and either find it missing or something else there, you have very little chance of tracking it down. If that is something important from your culture, it looks like the museum doesn't care about it, because it is missing. But the person responsible for this will generally be long since dead, so there is nothing we can do about it. We're a lot better at documentation now. But we get very excited when we find long-lost objects again.
Reminds me of that episode of Friends where Rachel took something from the museum and Ross is like, we have people looking for that.
Worked in grocery store. Anything we had in the front would be in the back, and if anything was not in the front meant that we were empty in the back. So every time the usual grumpy ass person would insist in having me go check round the back, I would go, talk to a colleague or use my phone for 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the item I was supposedly looking for, then come back to the person saying, oh, sorry, we are actually out of this at the moment.
The chats would turn out to be the most fun during the shift, too.
We aren't actually looking to see if we have whatever you asked for in the back.
Except in a handbag store where only one of each is displayed at any one time. It was very common occurrence that no one had made a run to the storeroom for an hour with the inventory tags, and we actually had plenty in the back but were understaffed. Same with luggage, only a few fit in the showing area.
Hospitals are dirty AF. Part of it is because of all the foot traffic and people using the facility. Part of it is because a lot of hospitals outsource their janitorial services to third-party companies, and it shows. I'm not saying that hospitals aren't sanitary, because they are. But outsourcing an important part of hospital maintenance to hungover college kids and addicts trying to support a habit who ultimately all get fired within 6 months only for the company to bring in all new hires and repeat that cycle over and over, isn't a very good idea. Also, they have lots of pests. Depends on where you live, but in my experience it's spiders, beetles, ants, praying mantises, bats, rats, groundhogs, and skunks.
I live in Ontario, Canada. Our hospital is pretty darn clean, but we don't outsource. All workers in the hospital are hospital employees, unionized and paid well. The only thing that might be gross is the magic curtains, that separate patient beds in the emergency room. Those don't get cleaned nearly enough.
A lot of nightmare customers get off on the power of upsetting a customer service representative, ruining their day or making them feel small. The truth is, seasoned customer service workers are so used to dealing with rude customers that it's water off a duck's back. We are far more likely to mock you and your voice when we hang up the phone than we are to be deeply hurt by you.
And regular customers get nicknames.
At Chuck E. Cheese in Tacoma, Washington in 2015, they had a malfunction with the industrial-sized cheese grater where it started grating itself and put metal shavings in the pizza. I was on my way to tell the manager about the moldy grapes from the walk-in fridge to put on the salad bar when I heard one of the other kitchen boys telling the manager about the malfunction, when I overheard the GM shrug and say, "Oh well, keep it going."
This is the first one that made my jaw drop. Jesus.